And I'll say good morning again. Welcome to the summer extended session, if you would. What we're doing this session is learning how to use the software in Lightroom to create a photo book. Now, with that said, everyone may not want to do a photo book, and doing a photo book is totally up to you. But it's popped up on our feedback sessions a couple times, so I thought I would go ahead and get this module done and get the information out there. If you don't want to do a book, we will still do what we normally would do each week. We'll have homework assignments and things of that nature with a homework review. We'll continue doing open question Q&A on Friday mornings. This first couple of weeks will be spent primarily looking at how to build a book, and I'll be going through the module on that. That book module that I'm working on is a work in progress. So when we finish it up, I will send out a final version of it. Right now, it's got a draft version. I sent this out a couple nights ago, along with the agenda, which is sent on Tuesday afternoon or Tuesday evening, I believe it was. So the book module was sent out I think the next day or so is when the book module was sent out. But that's a work in progress, and we're going through that. We're going to continue to go through that. Once we finish that, then I'll ask those of you who want to do a book to start putting your books together and then submitting those for review. I haven't quite figured out how we'll do that yet, but I think I'll be getting with Cynthia Donnell and asking her about allowing me to have host responsibilities versus co, so I can share screen with somebody. But once we get to that point, we'll look into that. Everybody may not want to do a book, but at least when you leave this module, it'll probably take us 2-3 weeks to finish up this book module and actually start working on a book. But once we leave it, at least if you don't want to do a book, you at least have the foundation to do one. So with that said, like I said, Friday morning is supposed to be an open session Q&A forum. What we're going to be doing this morning is jumping back into and doing a quick recap and then getting directly into the module. Hopefully the second hour, I can do a little bit of hands-on with the book module in Lightroom to show you what I've been doing with that book module. Everybody who has the Adobe suite will have access to this book module. It's a partnership that Blurb and Lightroom went to gather some revenue, because it definitely is revenue streaming when you look at sometimes the price of producing one of these books. If you have the Adobe suite, you've already got it. If you don't have it and you still want to do a book, there's software online it is free software that you can download. There's a company called Memento. I played with their software a little bit last night. It's a little bit of a learning curve, and all the software that you're using online is a little bit of a learning curve with it. So you have to just kind of go out there and figure it out. And that is if you don't have the Adobe product, because what we'll be featuring for the next few weeks or so will be off of the Adobe product. So there's Mento, which is mento.com, I think is a website. There is Flickr. I think Flickr offers up some type of bookmaking software as well as what's the other company, Smug Mug. There's a bunch of them out there, and most of them are all free as well. But with that said, let me just pull up a screen share and do a quick recap on what we went through on yesterday and get us back up to that module, and we'll go from there. So here we are. Let's move this out of the way. Get my screen set up, and I'll click play. All right, this is very briefly we're going through this because there are some changes to the assignments as well. I had a couple of some input on yesterday. Where's my groups here so I can see my hands? We had a couple of some input regarding the assignments, so I did make some modifications to that. I started off, this is our first week's my assignment, first week's homework, and this is from a family reunion that I did last weekend, the past weekend. Teddy helped me with this, so I want to give him credit for some of the imagery that he sent in. And at some point, I'll show you some of the images from this, because I'm building another book off of the family reunion, using that for a model for some of the books that we're going to be working in. We'll continue to do the same thing with size. Everybody's familiar with this size chart over here. This comes directly out of Lightroom. So everybody's familiar with this size dialog box here. So I don't have to go over this information here. So each week we'll be pulling this up and you'll be sizing based on that. All of your assignments for this session will also be at 300 pixels per inch. If you choose to do it less than that, just let me know you did it less than that. And just know that when we try to pull them up on the screen, it may be a smaller image versus a larger image. I think someone asked me on yesterday about building books in terms of the pixels per inch. I try to fit everything out at about 300 pixels per inch. So when going into a book module, it's much easier to do. You don't have to go back and do any resizing, et cetera. So you always determine before going into your output what the image is going to be used for. Is it going to be used for slide? Is it going to be used for web? Is it going to be used for print? Then you'll know how to output your image. This particular image, this is from our theme reflective. We've got 15, at 12, we actually noted. I've got 2 that have been modified. We're going to modify the color theme and we're going to modify the surreal theme to include abstract photography in that. I'll show that to you in just a minute or 2. This is reflective. And using rule number 5, which is leading lines. Let's get this off the screen here. We know about how to use this print dialog box here. This is from PPR, and these are suggested sizes based on your print size offered up out of Photoshop. If any of this is foreign to you, say something to me as we go on, because I'm assuming you understand what I'm talking about when we go through these various boxes here. We'll also continue to include the metadata. Metadata is the lifeblood of the photograph. If there's a problem or an issue with your image and not coming out like you want it to come out, go look at your metadata first. If you do not provide metadata to me, I cannot even begin to help you in terms of resolving issues. I've seen some images, for an example, metadata is important. I've seen some images that come in that were captured and they seem a little bit soft. People complain of sharpness and they complain of images being soft. There's 2 reasons primarily for images being soft. One is that you may have misfocused, that's being out of focus, where your focus didn't go where it needed to go. The other is if you got an image that's soft, I typically look at what shutter speed that you use. So that's how metadata comes in play for me. If I'm shooting a 400 millimeter lens, for an example, last thing I want to do is shoot it at 1/60th of a second. Although it may look like you're capturing it correctly, when you go into it, that image may be a little bit soft. And the reason for that is that your shutter speed was primarily too low. Unless you've got really, really steady hands, I would not try to handle a 400 or 200 or a long telephoto lens under less shutter speed than 250 or 500 or in the thousandths of a second to ensure sharpness. Here's the metadata for this particular image. I mentioned yesterday also, I thought that 2470, 24105 range is almost a perfect lens. You can take that one lens if you want and go out and do just about anything you want to do with it. Okay. All right, so let's get to the, this is a rule 5 for this particular photograph. I chose leading lines. Leading lines, sometimes you don't have to have a hard line. In this case, I'm using an optical line. We've got the reflection in the glass and the subject's eyes, the center of interest, the subject's eyes are all going in the same direction. The expression on the child's face, I thought, was just priceless. She's looking at it as well as he's looking at whatever it is they're looking at doing. I mentioned yesterday, I titled it, Wish I May, I Wish I Might. And this is one of those machines at a lobby or a game room where you go out and you manipulate the handle to pick up the prize you want. It's particularly intriguing to children for whatever reason. Let's see, what else? Lightroom for basic processing, Photoshop for cleanup, and Photoshop for cleanup. I'm saving it to my file here. So that's the image for this week. This was reflective, so it captures people. Let me go and I brought in the original file. If you look at it over here to the left, As I'm standing next to this vending machine, this white blob here, this is part of the side of the vending machine. Of course, the flash hit that and lit that up. And the question I came up with, what if? And then you're cropping and decide to crop it tightly and call it reflective. I've kind of already walked through these things here with you, so I won't go through those again. This again, just a quick recap of what we covered on yesterday. If there are questions, stop me, because what I'm wanting to do is get to our module so I can continue going into that. Also keep in mind, this is open forum, so if you got questions that you may want to pick up, want to ask regarding anything, we'll do those as we go well. Someone asked a question about reflective versus reflections. The box on the left here, this is the example, the tree and the being reflected off the water. That was the actual category. I went back and added to that category reflections because I thought there was some confusion about that. But reflective and reflections can be a theme from a photographic standpoint. The difference being, if you're doing reflective photography, it basically reflects a real image in the picture. You'll have two images, the actual image and the reflected image, say off of the water, what have you. In this case here, it's a reflective image as well. You've got the original subject and then you get the subject reflected off of something. If you are doing reflections, and this is a theme that we can use, you're typically shooting into glass, or you're typically looking into a mirror. I've also seen reflections where you're looking into someone's eyeglasses and you get the reflection of the person there. So typically with reflective, you'll have some type of symmetry, or you'll have some kind of a divided frame. Reflections, you will not have that. You're looking into some type of frame, right into some type of reflective surface and call reflections. So either of these categories will work in terms of what we're doing if you pull something out of reflections or reflective category or reflections category. My second image I mentioned to you, I was involved with a group out in Covington, and our theme for this month is red, white, and blue. And our interpretation of it, and this is what I put in for my homework assignment with this group. We meet once a month. This is digital capture, urban life, people, and I call it title America the Beautiful. Go to the sizing dialog box here. We know how that works there, so I don't need to really go through that with you. We did that in the initial opening. But what I do want to show you is, let's get out of this real quick. I'm going to get the what if slide. This is an image that was captured a while back. I think maybe a couple of years ago. We were doing a Heart of South DeKalb parade. This child was laying on the sidewalk watching the parade, and it was in inventory. So I went back, pulled it up. The original capture was basically a nice, cute image of a kid, but it's not very interesting. But what I was able to do with the skills or with the thing I've learned since that time was go in there to add some things to it. I actually changed the color of the glasses and added a background, which was the sidewalk in this case, and added a background of grass. When I took a picture of some grass on the front lawn, added that as a layer, changed the glasses out, and voila, I got a different style or type of picture. I think it's a much improved image versus the first image. So, and my point here I'm trying to make is that you are learning a lot of stuff. And as you learn stuff, go back, apply it on things going forward. Or if you've got something that you want to go back and maybe improve upon, do that. Go back and review some of your older images and see what could you do differently to make those images come out a little bit better. In this case, excuse me. In this case, this is my improved version of it. We also talked about the poster. Let me stop. Are there any questions prior to getting in this poster? I want to cover this a little bit more in detail here. But any questions up to this point in terms of our quick recap of what we did on yesterday? Okay. All right. No questions. The group that went over to James Hobby's and James and Pat Hobby's home last week, 2 weeks ago, I guess it was back in late May, I think we went over there. Andy Jackson, Carol Northington, Cynthia, Leon, Sharon, Talia. We went over and took pictures of the flowers in their garden. I sent the images to, took pictures of the flowers in their garden with the intent of sending the images to James, or whatever use he may want to use with it. So I created an album online, send link. And what he asked that we do is, if it were possible, could I put that into a poster for him? And I said, yeah, we could probably do that. And he wanted on 92 pictures or so in the poster. So we came up with a 20 by 30 print that I'm going to deliver to him. It'll be a metal print for his garden, because he wanted the print hang outside, so it's got to be weatherproof. The 20 by 30 metal print, we're going to run through a company called, I think it's called Severchrome or what have you, but they'll do the metal print for it. So I went about the work of creating the poster, and this is the poster. There's still some work to be done on it. I'm feeling out that I'm a little too tight up in here in this area here, but all those images in there, we have to kind of squash them down and make them small, almost like thumbnails. But once you put it on a poster, a 20 by 30, the smallest image is probably 3.5 by 5 or 4 inches wide, which is a pretty good size image. So it'll show up very well on a poster. It doesn't show up very well on the screen because we're looking at a small screen. He said he wanted to do something for the class. I told him what I would do is to make the file available to class. If you want to make a print off of this, you'll be able to do so. I'll upload it to the team room. You can download the file, run it off the PPR, make a print. Now, you can make a print any size that you want, but it's formatted to go up to 20 by 30. You don't have to do a 20 by 30. You can do a 10 by 15. You can do a 5 by 7 or so. You can do whatever size print you want from it. But all of the images are high resolution images, and they'll be included into one file. It'll be this poster. The way that's done is once I create this poster in InDesign, I save it as a PDF. Then I open up in Photoshop and save it as a JPEG file. So it'll be easily uploaded and accessible to whomever you want to have printed. But it is a high resolution file, and I told them that I would make it available to the class as well. And that is if you want it. I want to acknowledge the contributing photographers, which is Annie, Carol, Cynthia, Leon, Sharon, and Talia, for the work that they did on it. The hobbies were very appreciative for us for coming over. We had a fun time. I think they also were very happy to see someone. Well, they've been under COVID protocol like all of us have been for the last couple of years or so, and have not had very many visits at all. So that will be the file that was sent off to them. So thank you for a job well done. Looks like I got a hand up. Phil, you got a hand if you would. Go ahead.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Could you show us, if you haven't already, how to do that? How to put, say, I don't know, 9 or 12 photos together in a, say, 16 by 20?
We'll do that. It's called a montage. The software, if you got any kind of presentation software that's capable of outputting a PDF, then you would put those images together. Page layout and design, you put those together on a page, and then you export it or output it as a PDF. Now, Photoshop will allow you to open a PDF and convert it to whatever file you want to convert it to. And in this case, we'll convert it to JPEG. So yeah, I'll be glad to show it to you. We'll do that at some point, but that's how this process is done. In the process of doing this book, you'll probably see some of that done as well. But your basic output is PDF. Let me back up. Using a presentation package such as, what is the PC word you use? I use Keynote. There's a PowerPoint, I think, is a package. Anything that you can output to a PDF. A lot of times you can hit the print dialog box, save it as a PDF. And if you save that PDF save it as a PDF, you can open it in Photoshop, and then Photoshop will allow you to take it to another format. But yeah, we'll go through that as part of our process this session.
Yeah, like if you want to take like several of my pictures that are flowers or whatever, and put them together.
Yeah, make a poster from it, or make whatever you want to do.
Just not necessarily a poster, but like a 16 by 20 with I don't know, 12 images in it, just for an instance.
Yeah, you can also do that in Photoshop, but the easiest way to do it is through some presentation package. I use InDesign for that type of work, so I want to lay them out exactly the way I want to lay them out. Okay, but we'll do that. That's on the list of us for things for us to do as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, let's go to the next slide here. So again, we started this basic guide page layout design for photo bookmaking on yesterday. And what we got Friday morning is continuation and a review of the module. This is a hands-on book module we got in Lightroom. Those of you who use the Creative Cloud package will have this at your disposal. Those of you who do not, there is software that you can download or you can upload to such places as MugMug. There's a group called Memento that allows you to download software to make a book. If you don't want to make a book, that's totally up to you. But at some point in time, you may want to put together a book module. And then then this afternoon, we'll continue our open forum and hands-on with the book model. So we're going to be doing a lot of that this morning. So at this point, any questions as I go forward before I go into the next one here? Flo, is that, Felix, you got your hand up.
Bob, this is something else. The photograph of that you have here in the team room, that one, all of us, when we was out on that shoot.
Yeah.
Is it possible for you to give me a copy of that?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Anything you're involved in, you're welcome to it.
Okay, just send it to me.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Somebody else may want where I can make it available in the team room. I just give you a link to it. You can download it. But so it'll be a full resolution file. So do what you need to do with it. Okay. Let me just jot that down. Photo.
Yeah, you need to jot that down because your mind goes away.
All right, that's why. Let's dismiss with the old man notes this week. Okay. All right, Barrington, I saw your hand.
Yeah, well, my question is, I think I have more than one, but let me try see if I can explain it. My question is, why is it so difficult for me to go into Lightroom with a photograph and work on it and have problem getting it back out of Lightroom to go back to where it was? What am I doing wrong?
Well, Barrington, I have to actually sit down with you to see what you're doing, which process is. What I suspect is that you're not going in and out the same way each time. Now my suspicion is that you're not following what we call the workflow process. That's what my suspicion is. But I'd have to actually sit down with you to kind of walk through that with you and see what you're doing. I don't think you've been taught the right way to do it. And when I say the right way, when we did basic workflow before, there's a specific way you go in. If you don't go in and follow those rules religiously, you'll have a tendency to lose stuff. You'll have a tendency to not understand the process. So that's just my suspicion. I'm not for sure that's what the issue is, but that's just my suspicion.
But there is another time when I go in there and I can, the file is already in there. So I punch up the file and I'm looking for a particular photograph and I punch it up and it comes up. And when it comes up on the screen for me to work with it, then there's times where I can't find my instrument don't show up.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I need to sit down and see what you're doing.
Okay.
And maybe I can do something beyond that. I hear the call. I'm trying to figure out a way to resolve it or respond to it or answer your question or solution it.
Okay.
And it may just be I just need to kind of walk you through the process. And then once you walk through that process, you'll have to do it the same way every time until you understand the concept. A lot of people will look at, and there's a flow chart, but a lot of people will start a process. And once they learn it, it doesn't matter where you go in at, you know where you are. But if you don't understand the process or you don't understand where you landed when you're doing this, then it can be difficult. It can be challenging.
Okay.
There's a lot of moving parts there. Let me make a note. Maybe I can set up a tutoring call with you or something and maybe walk you through it. Barrington tutoring. Okay. All right. I don't need to put it on, but that's the only thing I do is see how you're doing. I can actually hand off to you, say, show me how you do it.
Thank you very much.
Quite welcome to some one-on-one.
Bob,
Yes, sir.
I used to have that same problem that Barrington is having. And
Yep.
my main problem was not clicking save.
Okay. Yeah. Save. Yeah.
Yes. You forget to click the save. It goes crazy.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, there's a lot of mistakes you could make as you go through that process.
Yeah.
Oh,
The save is the main one.
okay. All right. Well, we'll try and get that resolved. And like I said, I'll make it a primary importance. I'm going to have to get some, because you do.
It'll either help you, Barrington, or make you go further down the rabbit hole.
That's true.
Hey, Felix, I've been down that rabbit hole a few times. Trust me.
All right, then. All right, fellas, let's move on if we would. Let me go to the next slide. Due to some input on yesterday, and then I guess from feedback from the last session, I went through and we're going to continue doing the themes for the summer extended session. I've enhanced the monochrome photography to include specific color. I think Angela had asked us maybe we could do something with specific colors. And the four that I added are red, green, blue, yellow, but it could be any color you want to be. Monochrome will cover any of them. I've added that to the category of monochrome. And what that looks like is your color palette will be continuous. If you're doing something in yellow, it'll be all yellow, however you want to do that. If you're doing something in green, it will be all green, or how you want to do that. If you're doing something red or blue, the same type of thing. But what I ask that you do is to be monochromatic when you do that. But how do you feature a particular color? The theme that my group had from Covington was red, white, and blue. It was a patriotic theme, and you saw the images that I did for that. And this monochrome, this specific color fits very neatly under that category of monochrome photography. So figure something out from using color. You're not limited to red, green, blue, or yellow. If you come up with purple, or if you come up with orange, or if you come up with another color, I call it monochrome and do something under that category. Or particular color combinations at work, but just feature a color is what I'd like to see you do from a homework standpoint. So we kind of opened that category up a little bit is what we basically have done. Again, we'll continue with the categories that were used last session, and they seem to be pretty popular. The other thing we did is, my understanding is that some of you have learned how to do some things in abstract photography. And I added abstract, the category of surrealist photography. So surrealism and abstract would be the same category. So if you want to do something under surrealist or abstract, you can do it and claim that as a category that you want to start from as well. So those are the two that we've added. Along with those two that we added, of course, beaches, sports, and storms will always be there. So we've got maybe a total of 15, 17 at this point with the two new categories that were added. So that kind of opens it up. I mean, you're basically wide open to go and shoot anything you want. But these categories help you stay focused. And it helps you to understand structure, and helps you to understand how to apply rules to your photography. Because if you don't apply some type of foundational basis, such as rules or categories, your photography can be all over the place. At the same time, what I'd like you to do is kind of keep track of what buckets you fall into. As well for this theme, last session, let's go to the next slide here. Let's go to the next one. Last session, we were limited to 3 from each bucket. This session, you may dip into a bucket as many times as you want.
Okay.
For an example, if you like architectural, if you like flowers, if you like food, you may do as many as you want. What this is designed to do is help you find yourself. So you may do as many as you want out of the same bucket. And what that does for you is, I lost my train of thought. But you can do as many times as needed out of the same bucket. So if you like architectural, monochromatic, people, etc. I'm sorry, what I'm trying to get is that this will probably start to define your style. Let's go back one slide if I can do that. it'll probably start to define your style or what you like, the type of work you like to do. When I was tracking last session, the bucket that I hit the most was urban life or people. All my images can had people in them. A couple times I did flowers, which I consider things. Then I had one for each of the other areas. Food, I did one food, I did one surrealistic, did one reflective. No, reflective was this session, and one of each of the others. But it'll help you to define style because you're going to gravitate towards the things you like to do most. So I guess somewhat wide open. So that's kind of where we're going from a assignment standpoint for this session. Let's go to the next chart here. Any questions at this point? Okay, let me move forward. Abstract photography, we just added, and looking forward to seeing some of the things you've learned from there. How to approach this is the same thing. These are all the assignments, any one of the 17 you can choose. And again, I'm going to ask that you include resolution, pixel dimensions, and this is to you in terms of your sizing. But keep in mind for this session, if you are going to make a book, size all your stuff out at 300 pixels per inch, so you don't have to go back and do it later. So size it out at 300 pixels per inch, so you don't have to like. This is the area. This is our feedback sheet from a couple of sessions ago. I've gone through and everything this red we've covered. Everything's in black is still to be covered. Everything that's in purple or this pinky magenta, these are things from a meetup standpoint, trips and travels that we talk about doing. The areas that I want to focus on this session is making a photo book using blurb. This came to us from Wilma a few sessions ago. That's what we're going to spend a lot of time on. Then we're going to do some work on product advertising for photography for a magazine cover for book. And I thought this is useful here that I'll take a look at this from Jose. And so next week or the week after, we'll start looking at how you do product advertising for photography for a magazine. It's a simple form. I won't say simple. It stays simple on the surface, but if you're designing a book cover or you're designing advertising photography, you see it, and all of a sudden you realize there are some traits involved with it as well. We'll do those after we finish this bookmaking thing. I'll probably introduce a little bit of that in the coming week, but once I feel like we've got a pretty good handle on the book software, we'll delve off into that. So these are the two main topics that we will be working on. This one from Cynthia about keeping costs low as we go through this bookmaking process, how to do that. Basically, anytime you make a book, the cost is going to be, you can control the cost based on the number of pages, the number of photos you put on a page. The previous books that we've done, we've highlighted an individual photograph per page. There are the ways you keep that cost down is to put multiple photographs on a page, and I'll show you how to do that well. So that's kind of where we're headed for this session. This is the bulk of it. I don't know if this will take us over into the fall session, but this is a lot of stuff to kind of unpack or cover, and I don't think we can get it done in 6 or 8 weeks. It may bleed over into the fall session as well. That's kind of where we're headed, and that's kind of a recap for what we did on yesterday. Do I have any questions at this point in time?
Yep, I got my hand up.
Okay.
But you went by the theme-based stuff and went into this before I got a chance for you to.
Okay, here we go then. Let's go back to the
All right. As a black and white photographer,
Yeah.
which I love black and white,
Okay.
how does one distinguish a sunrise or a sunset in black and white photography?
That's interesting. That's an interesting challenge, Felix. I mean, typically, the simple answer is just convert to black and white. That's the simple answer. I would have to think about that because you don't see many sunsets done in black and white. But give it a shot. Go out and shoot a sunset and see how it comes off. I think. That's an interesting question, Felix. And I'm glad that.
That's why I'm asking the master.
Yeah, but that's interesting. So I have to put my head around that.
Okay.
You don't see a lot you don't see a lot of black and white sunsets. I can't recall seeing them, but it can be done. But how do you go about doing that?
Yeah, how do you let somebody know that's what it is?
It's a sunset. Let me do some research on that. I like the challenge. Sunsets in black and white. Sunsets or sunrises in black and white. Black and white. Because typically your sunsets, they're all about the glow and the color and the sky.
Correct.
That's a good question. That's a good question. Again, like I said, off the top of my head, I'm not thinking just go and take your regular image and convert it to black and white.
See, and Ansel Adams ain't here.
That's true. So we're gonna have to approach this like how would Ansel do this? All right.
I've read all his stuff and I've never seen that.
Yeah. All right. That's a good question. Let me dig into that and get back to you on that one, but I'll definitely do that. Okay. So we are at 9:38. Let's take a break and then come back, say 10 minutes, 9:38, 9:40, come back at 9:50, 9:55 and jump into our module. Because what I want to do is pick up where we left off on yesterday and then go directly into the book module. So let's call it 9:40, take about a 10-minute break, come back at 9:50, and I'll see you on the other side. Okay. Okay, is everybody back at this point? Start the recording. Let me just ask there any questions that we need to flip back on before we go forward. Questions, Q&A? Okay. All right. What I'm going to do is share screen and pick up basically where we left off on yesterday on this book module. As I mentioned yesterday, let's see if I can get this away. Let me back out of this for just a second. And spotlight that. Get this down off the screen. Okay. All right. Yeah. There we go. We're good. This is what we picked up yesterday. As I mentioned earlier on this morning, we're going to focus most of our attention on how to do a book, a photo book. And this is a simple guide. This thing about page layout and design, you would be surprised how complex it can get. But this is just a simple guide. The principles are timeless. If you look from one book to the other, you'll find the same types of things going on. This guide is designed to just kind of walk you through how some of this stuff works. The images of books sitting on the screen up here, these are some of the books I took a look at. All of these are on Amazon. If you want to go out and take a look at them, you can't see the entire book. Amazon will give you the ability to kind of preview some stuff if you want to do that. So, but these are some of what I consider some of the finer books around in terms of what we're trying to do, more professional design books. This presentation will also take you through a little bit about typefaces and fonts, what's the difference and things of that nature. We'll be using Lightroom to do our bookmaking. The Lightroom Classic version is what we'll be using. And underneath that Lightroom Classic version, there's a book module. We'll be using that. And I'll give you the pros and cons of that. I mean, I don't mean to disparage the product. The Lightroom book module is a very good place to start. But once you understand some of the higher end book modules, you'll probably want to work with those. One of the programs I use is called InDesign. I would like to call myself a novice in design because it does a whole lot more. It's a program like Photoshop. It does a whole lot more than I am using it for, or I am capable of using it for. So we're going to cover all these things as we go through. Again, it's a work process. This is the first slide we jumped into on yesterday. I think we spent about 40 minutes on it. We got through how to design a great book, and I gave you some points here. These bullet points basically speak for themselves. What the module itself will cover, your purpose and plan. We got through this first slide here, being clear on the purpose of your book, keeping your layouts designed simple so photos look the best. Include only your best, most meaningful photographs. We're going to break these down into detail in subsequent slides. Feature your money shots on pages of their own, or give them one page by themselves, or give them a full page spread. We talked a little about what a full page spread would be. Symmetry and white space. We did some talk about that. Symmetry, white space, margins, what your book should set up. How do you make it look professional? If you understand symmetry, white space, and margin, you will never do an autoflow book again. Just put a bunch of photographs on a page is not very professional looking, but that's kind of how you would start. And once you get started that way, then you start to manipulate that from there. Choosing the paper, the cover, the finishes that best suit the purpose of your book along with page designs. You'll be responsible for designing your pages. Lightroom, the book module under Lightroom will give you some options. We'll go into all of that as we go. This is the first slide we covered on yesterday. So are there any questions regarding this first slide? And then if not, we'll just go directly into the next slide and we'll start talking about being clear on the purpose of your book. But we'll follow this format pretty much. These are the topics that we will cover, and then we'll wrap up with the same. So any questions at this point? Anybody ever designed a book? Anybody ever thought about designing a book? As I mentioned earlier, this may not be something that everybody wants to do.
I got a question for you.
Sure, go ahead, Felix.
My photos, most of my photos are like in segments. Now, if you're going to set up so that you can design a book, like you say, your book have to be able to say something.
Yeah.
You have to have a theme where you're going.
Yeah.
Is it possible?
Not necessarily a theme, but that's purpose where you want to go. But again, I'm sorry.
Is it possible to have like 3 or 4 pages on photos from one segment and then 3 or 4 pages of photos of another segment? Or is that it's too much to carry?
No, you can do that, but what you want to do is segment the book in terms of chapters. That's where like a table of contents comes into play. We did something very similar with the book we did on the Best Of collection. There's a bunch of photographs in there. They're all over the place. And we broke it down into black and white people, black and white places, black and white things. And we also did certain categories under color, same category, color people, color places, color things. You can do it that way as well. When you're featuring a lot of stuff, you just have to let the viewer know where you're going. If you're mixing and matching all these things, it becomes a little bit confusing to your viewer. But if you segment, say under one section, people, all my black and white people are in this section here. All my black and white places in this section here, and color, same way. You just have to kind of lay it out, have a specific purpose, and you can show all 3 categories, or you can show whatever you got. Once you pull all of your photographs together, this is something I mentioned to you over the break. Pull all of your photographs together, and kind of categorize those photographs. And by categorizing them, you like, what is this about, or what is that about? Maybe you don't have enough of that. Maybe you've been in a lot of shows. You've got a lot of entries where you're winners. Maybe this is a book about things that winning entries from a show standpoint. You could categorize it that way. Maybe you got something. You're doing a lot of work with your cell phone, but under the cell phone category, what else are you taking pictures of? A lot of your work, as I recall it, looks to be about street photography. It may be a category called street photography with a cell phone. Just something like that. But once you gather all of the images, pull everything together that you think you might want to put in a book, and then start to break those categories down. That you got.
Okay, I got you.
Okay. All right. So let's go to the next slide then. We've already covered this slide here, so we're going to jump directly and be clear on the purpose of your book, which is basically the question they just asked. So how do you do that? You're trying to tell a story in that book, whatever that story may be. So you start out by defining your book's purpose, and then let that purpose guide all of your decisions. You don't want to start off doing a book on cell phone street photography using a cell phone, and then all of a sudden you throw a DSLR in there, or then all of a sudden you decide that you want to do something other than street photography. You don't muddy your waters by doing something different to it. So keep that in mind. So what story are you trying to tell? And you basically start off defining your books and let that guide all of your sections. The images you see over to the right, for example, the world's most romantic destinations. This is one by that National Geographic did. And there's about 15 getaways, private retreats, enhancing places to go to celebrate love is what the subtitle basically says. But what you would expect to find in there are these romantic destinations when you open that book up. Same thing with Greg Hessler's portrait. You would expect to find nothing but portraits in there. McCurry, which is he's a favorite of mine. McCurry and Richard Avedon, I talk about a lot. They're both favorites of mine. And when I look at Steve McCurry's work, he did a lot of work in India, but a lot of it was on portraiture and things that people did in everyday life. So that's what I expect to find there. If I'm looking at a wildlife photography photo book, I would expect to find nothing but wildlife. I would expect to see a lion walking down the streets of New York City under a wildlife photographer's book at all. If you do something on the 4th of July weekend, it would cover just 4th of July weekend. If I'm doing something on a family reunion, I wouldn't expect something to be in there other than what I'm covering on a family reunion. If I'm going to do something about Cumberland Island and the National Seashore, I wouldn't expect to find in there, oh, I made a stop by Tybee Island or I went up to Jekyll Island. All I want to see in there is Cumberland Island, Georgia photography is what I want. Now, if you're doing a portfolio, this is a little bit different. Portfolio could be all about presenting your best photographs for maximum impact. And what it would include are your best images. Now, what if you are, and when you're doing a portfolio, you're going to look at it from the standpoint of what you do best. That's what you would feature. But what if you do something else a little bit better as well? Maybe you don't want to do a portfolio of all of the work that you do, just some of the work that you do. If you go to any photographer's website, especially a commercial photographer, I was trained as a commercial photographer, so we do a little bit of everything. But what if you're a portrait photographer? You only do work in the portrait area. You are going to submit the very best work that you do as a portrait photographer. So what does a commercial photographer's website look like, or their book would look like? What I would do is break that down into people, places, and things. Maybe some commercial shoots, maybe some events and things of that nature. But I wouldn't not necessarily put those all in the same section. I would divide the sections up. And then on those sections, you might have headings like portrait photography. Open the chapter on portrait photography, nothing but portraits in there. Wedding photography. If I do a section on wedding photography, nothing but weddings in there. If you go to my website, that's kind of how I would fashion a book that would feature the work that I do as a commercial photographer. There's not a lot of product or advertising photography there because I'm not specialized in a lot of that. So whatever you do, you want to make sure you specialize it and you want to highlight that. But a portfolio book, if you are portrait, do portraits. If you are street, do street. If you do whatever it is you do, you want to maximize it under that category. This category is a portfolio book. So you're going to start off by, like I said, trying to define the book's purpose. Is it for portfolio? On a portfolio as well, you don't want to put multiple images on a page if you're doing a portfolio. A portfolio, you may have one image on a page, you may have one image that's basically white space. Because again, this is going to be about the best work that you do from a portfolio standpoint. So with one image on a page, your viewer is looking at the best piece of work for this particular subject or genre. You put more than one image on a page, then what you got with the problem that you run into is they begin to compete with each other. Sometimes if you're looking at it from a cost standpoint, you may want to put images on one page or images on the other page. That helps you kind of bring your cost down a little bit. Maybe one image to a page is what you want to do from a portfolio standpoint. So if I'm doing a book on Cumberland Island, for example, and this is all about Cumberland Island, I've got one photograph on one page, one on the other. This can be a very expensive proposition if your whole book is laid out like this. But again, these two pages, and this kind of gets back also to the standpoint how a page interact with each other. What the reason for these being laid out this way is that I like the way this branch is curling, and then it leads into the next page and becomes very firm, it has a lot stronger foundation. So you move from a curly, twisty to kind of a rigid type of foundation type of setup. But this would be 1 page per book. That could be very costly if you're doing a portfolio, or if you're doing any type of book, that could be very costly. So some of the things we'll look is how to avoid that cost, how to break these down into modules on different pages. But if I'm doing a portfolio, I would probably go for 1 page per book. That's what basically would do. I tend to like the larger size books, and I like the large landscape size books. Now you'll find, and we'll see this on another slide as well, but you'll find a lot of the work that's coming through is done in portrait orientation, and that's because of the format of phone that most people do in their work in. There's nothing wrong with doing a book in that format at all. But I grew up with the widescreen, rectangular landscape orientation. Some photographers refer to it as horizontal orientation, or it may be referred to as vertical orientation. What I was taught was that's either portrait orientation, where it's up like up like this, which is what a lot of folk do now, because that's the way the phones are made, or it's landscape orientation. And they call them horizontal. So either of those terms are usable. But I prefer the larger landscape-oriented types of books as opposed to the square, which is the one over here in street photography, or the portraits. I prefer the landscape-oriented types of books myself. But again, it's totally up to you in terms of how you want to lay your book out, whichever one you prefer. If you're doing iPhone or phone photography, you can still change the orientation. You don't have to be landscape, or you don't have to be portrait. You can still change the orientation. So you're going to pick a book out kind of match to what you want to do. And again, my preference is a large landscape. Okay, do I have hands up or questions at this point?
Yeah, Bob, I got one.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have a particular size that I like, but what size do you think would be suitable for what we're doing?
For what I do, I like the 11 by 13 large landscape. There's some 10 by 8s, but 11 by 13 large landscape is what I like. And that basically is, it's not portrait, it's a landscape.
Yeah.
I like the larger books myself.
I like 12 by 12.
12 would be a square, and that works as well for you. I mean, 12 square is almost what they call perfect format, because you can do anything inside a square book. Now, keep in mind when you open the book up, whether it's square or landscape or portrait, when you open up, you're going to have that to contend with too as you're doing your design.
Mm-hmm.
Get a little bit more of that when we get into symmetry and what have you.
I'm more looking on photograph that tells the story. So it's like you're not reading it, but the photograph will take you from one section to the next section, and you'll go on from there. It's like reading the book.
Right, exactly. Yeah, your photographs will tell a story. And I'll show you how some of that is done as well as we get to it.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. So again, larger size books I like, they look more distinguished, and you can also pass those down. Maybe doing a book on holiday or vacation photos. That's totally different. That could be very whimsical. That could be 3 or 4 pages. I mean, not 3 or 4 pages. You could have multiple images on a book, in a book, if you're doing something of that nature. I'll show you how to do that in one of the other slides. That holiday or vacation photo could be a story, places you visited, things you saw, and things you experienced. Cumberland Island was one of those types of books as well. A lot of times adding text or captions can make it more interesting. Some of these photo books that you'll look at, there won't be any text or there won't be any captions. It's just a photograph. And you're going there basically to look at the photograph. If I'm looking at a Steve McCurry book, I don't necessarily need to have all the detail about it. I'm looking at it just for the enjoyment of how he captures images. That's basically how I'm looking at it. But adding text for captions can make it a little bit more interesting. We'll talk about that as we go on as well. Ryan, you got your hand up.
Yes. Are you saying that all of the photos in the whole book should be the same size or just on the same page?
No, they should not all be the same size. It means should not necessarily all be on the same page. What I'm saying is you've got some leeway there. You can take one photograph and put it on one page to be your lead-in type of image. On the next page facing it, and depending on the type of book you're building as well, you could have multiple photographs. I use this family reunion as an example. I'll show you how that works in just a second. So, but on one page there may be one large photograph. On the next page there may be several photographs.
Oh, okay.
Where you broke that down. Okay. If you're doing a portfolio, you don't want your images to compete with each other. And the ideal for a portfolio is one picture per page. If you are trying to save cost, then you put one picture, may have pictures facing each other, but those two pictures should interact and should create some interaction between the two. Should create something there.
So if it's a portfolio, it should be the whole book. Is that right?
Yeah, if you do a portfolio, you want to do about the whole book.
Okay.
And it's typically the entire book will be one image per page or a 2-page book portfolio. The ones that I've seen from like some of the, for example, Avedon did a book in the American West, I think it was called Big Book. But as you open it up, there were photographs on each page. Could have easily, but there's only one photograph per page. Now he could have easily done one page per photograph, but the opposite page being blank. Again, that adds cost and that adds padding and that makes for a very, very large book.
Right.
But he was espousing his portfolio that way. But two images on the spread, you got one on either side, could make a nice portfolio style book as well. Provided you kind of keep this segmented. So if I'm doing a section on portrait, I would do just portraits and I'll do photograph on each page from a portrait standpoint. If I'm doing something on, I like to do things like still lifes and things of that nature, I'll put two side by side there. Or for my still lifes, I may only do one per page because I don't want them competing. But portraits can kind of complement each other. And there's no right or wrong way to do it. It's just however it feels and how it works out for you based on your layout, your page layout design. And like as you start to doing these things, it becomes a little bit more easier to do it because you'll start to understand things like white space. You'll understand things like flow. You'll understand things like how to tell a story, how your images tell a story. The same way we lay out a photograph, where you pick up the camera, you look through the viewfinder, you still got that same rectangular format in front of you, and you place your sensors of interest or your components, your pictorial elements in that viewfinder. You do the same thing with a book. You lay out and you decide where you want to put things there. So again, excuse me, adding text or captions can make it more interesting, but what text or captions do you add? Do you have to put that on every page? Not necessarily. And we'll talk a little bit about that when we get to the section of it. In a portfolio, in some of your books, like when you do variety, say for 4th of July weekend, there's a lot of variety here. The photographs may be different sizes, different things of that nature. Portfolios, you may want to do some consistency here. You may want to show your ability to be formal and format your images basically the same. When I look at the images that I capture, just about everything I shoot is in landscape orientation, just about everything I shoot. If I want to change that size, there's two particular formats or aspect ratios I go with, and that's 3:2 and 4:5. If I want to change that ratio from 3:2, I'll probably go to 4:5 And then with a 4:5 aspect ratio, I can do a portrait-oriented 4:5, or a landscape-oriented 4:5, or I can do a portrait-oriented 4:5 aspect ratio. And I'll talk to you about those as we get to them. But you want to be consistent there, because what you're doing is showing off your ability to lay out things consistently in your book. The purpose of any book is to keep you returning the pages, and you want them to get to the end and want more pages to turn. And when you've done that, then you've done a good book, because a lot of times you'll pick up a book and flip through the first couple of pages and you're done. But you want that book to make people continue to turn those pages, what you want to do. So choosing a type of book, you have to develop a plan. What is your story you're telling? What type of book you're going to be putting together? And these are some examples of the types of books that you might put together: portfolios, portraits, destinations. But make sure that the book is all about whatever it is on the cover. You don't want to mix, match up, or confuse the viewer from that standpoint. All right, questions at this point? Okay, all right, let's move into the next slide then. The first step in putting your book together, and to make this process easier, is choosing your photos. There's choosing your photos from the actual step of laying them out. You go through your stack of photos, whatever they may be, and choose them first. Then you start your layout proposition. Using the photos, if I'm doing a book on Cumberland Island, and that's what this layout here under Lightroom shows. This is a book that I'm doing about Cumberland Island. So I'll choose all my photos that I want to use in this book that were captured from Cumberland Island. I would not choose any photos from Jekyll Island or Tybee Island. This is all about the Cumberland Island trip, whatever you took on Cumberland Island. We tend to go into an event and we shoot haphazardly. Your cameras, the modern cameras now have the ability to timestamp everything that you shoot it. When you capture these images and you start laying out your book, think about it from a standpoint of how you actually captured the event. You want to be able to tell a story. That's what you basically want to do. And sometimes using auto layout will kind of get you started. But you want to kind of go on and make sure that your book tells a story. So you want to choose the photos first, and that's totally different from laying them out in your book. What you're looking at on the right-hand side of the page here is the first attempt at laying them out. In this software that we're using, Lightroom Book Module, it gives you the option of choosing a layout. You're going to be working with a double spread, because the book, just the way it's set up, whether it's portrait orientation, whether it's landscape orientation, when you open it up, you got a left and a right side. That's your basic layout. What do you lay out? How do you lay your stories out? Do you put one page, one photograph per book? Do you put multiple photographs? One photograph per page, or do you put multiple photographs per page? We're going to look at that as we go through in terms of of how you actually set it up. Do you use a full page bleed? It's called a 2-page spread here. Typically, that's left for your best photographs. But Lightroom gives you the ability to choose that. When I said Lightroom, I'm talking about the book module in Lightroom. So maybe it should call it LRC book. Gives you the option of doing that. You can put 2 photos on page 3, multiple photos. You've got lots of options there. When we get into the hands-on portion, I'll show you this drop down, basically how it works. But you want to start at the beginning of your book and walk through. And as a person looks at your book or flips through the pages, what they should get is a feeling of going on that particular trip with you, or whatever you're trying to take them through. They should feel like the book can be used as a guide. It should take them almost right back to the point in time when you actually capture the images. So this is important. Choose your photos first. On occasion, I've chosen a lot of photos for a particular book, and I'll wind up not using all of those photos because when I start the layout process, page layout process, some of them do not work. So, but we'll talk about those as we go, and we'll put them on page and look at them. Again, once we get to the point where we already had time to practice and actually put a book together, we'll review those books for you online, and I'll try to give you as much guidance as I can at that point in time. This task may seem a little daunting, a little overwhelming as we start, but it's not. Once you get the basic, you should be fine. Michael, you got a hand up.
Good morning, Bob. Is there a way, once you compile your folders, you may want to compile your pictures, you may want to put them in a folder. Once you put them in Lightroom and you decide that you want to maybe shift them around, can you just highlight them at the bottom and just move them up or back?
In Lightroom, you said one. Now, let me make sure I understand what you're asking.
How do you rearrange the pictures once you load them in Lightroom? Can you just shift them around, up, back, or if you highlight the picture, can you drag it here? And if you want to move it from one page to another, you can do that, right? You should be able to.
I don't think so. In Lightroom, the way they go into that film strip is by timestamp.
Okay.
They go by timestamp. Now, and that's the sort capabilities in Lightroom. Usually I bring my photographs in based on the timestamp, the time they were captured. I think that's where Lightroom sets them up. Once you decide all the photographs that you want to use and you go into book module, you can sort the page any way you want.
Okay.
And during the sorting process, and there's another slide that talks about put them in 2 or 3 different folders. I tend to avoid the different folders. I'll put everything in one folder and then I'll rank them by stars. Say I'll give my 2-star, 1-star, 2-star, 3-star, etc. All of 3 stars, I want to make sure that they're in the book. All of my 1 stars, maybe I could use in some places in the book, if I'm have you. But we'll talk about that when I get to that section on the sorting part of it. But I think in Lightroom, what you're going to wind up with sorting them by date and time. That's the way they actually go in. So you can't actually go to the film strip and slide it around. You can stack them down there. And you can do some sorting just based on your rating system down there. But once you open that book module, you go to there, you can drag and drop on where you want. And what Lightroom will show you is that, for example, this on the bottom screen here, number 23, this image has been used twice in the book. There's a little tab that will pop up that will show you how many times it's been used. So I've used this once on the cover, and I use it also once inside the book as well. So, and you can sort them inside the book in the layout any way you want them. You can move them around, slide them around, and you'll see how that's done as well as we do that. So hope that answers a question.
It actually did, because even in Lightroom, if I wanted to export some pictures out, I found I couldn't rearrange them in Lightroom to send them to maybe the Adobe Cloud thing or someplace else. They were kind of stuck. I couldn't move them, which I thought was kind of strange. But
yeah, true that. Yeah. So another place you can do your sorting if you want to use that process, and that's to go ahead and upload them to Lightroom, create your album. And
yeah, that's what I normally did. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can go up there and you can arrange them up there. And I've had that on occasion when albums are worth to put together. For example, we were doing this family reunion last week, and we got there early. Normally I'll go in and I'll start shooting from the outside and walk in. Once I got there, I went directly in and I shot pictures inside, then I had to come back out, shoot pictures of where I was, a location and things of that nature. So they came into a different sort. They showed up later on in the strip versus early on the strip. So you'll be able to work around those issues. Flex, you got a question?
Yeah, I thought you said to use collections.
Yeah, we're going to get to that. Yeah, I'm going to get to that. That when you're choosing your photos, you want to put them in a collection. If you look over here on this, the screenshot I've got, the book is all under a collection. So you want to put them in a collection. Go through, say you shoot 200 images, and your develop or your library module to start with. You don't want to take all 200 images into your collection. You only want to take over to the collections of book, the images that you want to use in the book. So you drop those into a collection, create a collection of the images that you want to use. They will still be sorted by a timestamp. Then when you open that up in the book module, you've got those images there. And we'll walk through that, show you how to create a collection in Lightroom.
All right.
Now, this Cumberland Island will also be under the library as well, but all of the images that were under that library, there may be 200 under the library, but only use 45 in the collection of the images that I want to use. Okay, remember, this is a tip here, hot tip, 2 of these. Less is more. So only select your best photos that support the story that you're telling. Only the best. And a lot of times we have a tendency to want to just bring everything in and just kind of figure it out as we go. But collect only your best photos. Do not include photos that are poorly composed or out of focus. They will not make it to your book. So everything that you put in the book should be technically accurate, accomplishes the intent, and is compositionally sound. And I can't emphasize that enough. If you've got a photograph that has special meaning, there's a way to put that on a grid, lower the opacity, use it as a background image, make it a smaller photo. The way to do that when you're working in your book. But a dud is something that does not meet technical accuracy. Technical accuracy is the file size is the right size for the intended purpose. If the file size is too small, you have to use it. Do not do a full page spread because it's going to look like a file size too small. Do a very small image, do an accent photograph of it or something, put it on, use it as a background photograph or something, but don't use a dud and a full page image where the software has told you that it will not work. When you're loading these images up inside the software, you will see it, sometimes an exclamation point will pop up and it'll say this photograph is too small for the size that you're trying to include it as. Make it smaller to the point where it will work, or don't use it at all, or use it on a very small, on a collage of some sort. If you're working on travel album, choose a variety of photos that tell the full story. This is a travel album. This Cumberland Island was a travel album, and these are all books that I've kind of worked on just to kind of prepare for this particular module that we're doing on the books. But I went back, looked at some work that I did, Cumberland Island back in May. These are all pulled from. So choose a variety of photos. There's pictures of people, there's pictures of things, there's pictures of places, horses. There's things that were part of the album. That helps to tell your story. If it's a family, for travel and for people, yeah, to mention that. If it's a family portrait book with photos from a professional shoot, say that are similar, create a variety by selecting photographs and shots from different angles or perspectives. When we did this this event, this family, the family reunion, one morning we did portraits of the family. Did multiple portraits, different angles, different versions of it. Include all that in a book if it's about family portraits. There was a whole section there. I'll show you that section as well when we get to the point of looking at that family reunion. It's a story. You put it together basically a storybook. So these are and we'll use this guide back and forth. It's not something module that we'll go through one time and discard it. And again, this is a work in progress type of module. So what we'll do is I'll be changing it throughout the session, and when I get it finalized, I'll send the final copy of it. What you have now and what you're looking at now is basically a draft copy. So we'll go from there. All right, questions at this point. What time of day is it getting to be? 10:30. So any questions at this point? If not, I'll just move on. Okay. Let's go to the next slide. Sort and select. And I think it's a continuation of sort and select here. We may talk about sort and select here. This is a bullet I'm trying to brought up earlier. It's also handy to sort photos in 2 or 3 different folders. 2 or 3 different folders is what you may want to do as well. I like using the different folders. I put everything in one collection, and in that one collection, I will rank them. In terms of 1, 2, and 3, this is what I use in terms of different folders. you may have one, and what they're asking us to do, and I pulled this presentation down and kind of modified for our use from a company called Momentum. But what they're asking you to do is to sort your photos in 2 or 3 different folders. One for what's referred to as your money shots, and these are photos that usually you'll find as a one-pager in the book. These are all money shots. You don't want those photographs to compete with anything else, so they'll have a page of their own. Another for secondaries, the images that can appear like in smaller size. They act somewhat as what we refer to as visual punctuation, or connecting your pages. These can be in smaller sizes. What I tend to do, or they could be detail shots, things you find interesting, such as table holders, ornaments, centerpieces. They kind of help to build the story in your book as well. You can use them for spots as well in your book. And when I'm doing weddings, I'll shoot pictures of the reserve sign. I'll shoot pictures of the flowers. I'll shoot pictures of the table setting. I'll set pictures of the centerpieces on the table. And when you put your book together, they can be dropped in different places. What I would suggest you do is consider a 1, 2, and 3-star approach. But the higher the number, the more you the more you want that image in the book. And those images may, say for an example, a 3-star image may have a page on its own. A 1-star image may be multiple photographs or what have you. But let's see, this is what I'm trying to get at this point in time. Here's the same slide that we saw previously. But if you look at it now on the film strip, these are divided by 2 and 3 stars. I don't think I got any 4 stars in here, but basically divided into 2 and 3 stars is what they are. So these 3 stars will definitely make the book. The 2 stars, if there's a question about them, the 2s that usually definitely make the book. I don't have any 1 stars in this strip here, but if the 1 star, it's an image that maybe may not make the book. I give, for an example, this 3-star with snakes here. It has a full page. This is a 2-star. I'm trying to find a 2-star image here. These up on top here, pages 8 and 9. That will be a 3-star image there. And the 2 on this side here may be 1 2-star images here. So they would go on a separate page. They could go on a page where there's multiple images and whatever. And you'll have that option to select when you go through the LRC book module and look at how you want to lay your actual graphs out. So that's the method that I use. There's no perfect number of photos to include in the book, but again, you want to keep this only your best. And you can't have 500 of your, well, I guess you could if you're prolific like that. You could have 500 of your best photographs. I would suggest those 500 could probably be edited down to 100 of the very best is what you could probably do. But there's no perfect number. I think less is more. Fewer photos make your book look better and the book looks more professional. And don't be afraid to use white space for a more minimalist look. This image over here on the right-hand side, the one of Hillary Clinton. This is one page with some text. And what they're doing this is very interesting here. This is actual page number of the book. 33 is the page number. She's looking in the direction. You don't make sure your photographs interact. If I put her on the back side of this, have the type behind her, she's looking away from that. This pulls you into the typography itself. So this is nice white space around her, and this is looking into it, and you can go and read it. It's a little bit about her biography and what have you. So up here, one of the, and I'll show this to you in another slide, when you're putting pages, multiple photographs on a page, they should be looking toward the center of the book. This is a little bit of a gutter here. You can see that. They should be looking toward the center of the book. So everybody's looking in that direction, just looking back in that direction. That supposedly is a graphics artist trick for keeping your view inside the book. If you were to flip this around, this girl here, she's looking that way, it takes your gaze away from the book. So these are just some things, some tips and techniques we run across and we'll include as we go through it. For a more minimalist look, use a lot of white space. And this photograph here on the bottom, this is what we refer to as negative space, but use a lot of white space. in your books. This is white space around the Hillary Rodham Clinton image. This is considered negative space. Negative space and white space can be almost, the terms can almost be used interchangeably. So this becomes negative space. Negative space is any place where text or an object or graphic or photograph is not. That becomes negative space. When you're doing page layout and design, that's called white space. In a photograph, it's called negative space, where your subject does not reside. So don't be afraid to use white space or negative space for a more minimalist look, which tends to make your book look a little bit clean, a little bit more professional, what they basically do. If you go back and look at any of the books that we've done from a classroom standpoint, if you go back and look at any of those books, notice the white margins, and you'll notice the white margins and the use of white space or negative space, and single entries per page. But that's makes it look more professional, and that's a good use of white space or negative space, you're going to call it that. All right, I've got the slider out. See, are there any questions at this point? Every time was 10:34. All right, any questions at this point? Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, we're going to do this slide, and then we will. I think we'll break, and I want to go into some hands-on, because I want to continue just do like. Let me stop there, and ask are there any questions at this point. And we'll come back, pick up, talk about sequencing. So a lot of information to cover, and it's a lot of information to absorb. Questions?
Hey, Bob.
Yes, sir.
Are there minimum pictures you can put in a book, or what?
A minimum number? They start you off with about 20 pages.
Okay.
So that's kind of a very, if you were to set up a book inside a Bird, I think it starts you off with about 20 pages if I were to create a book.
And so you can have one or two photos or 3 photos on each page if you decide to, right?
Yeah, but it seems like the minimum is about 20 pages, or maybe I'll just say it like that, about 20 pages. And the photos could be, you could have more than 20 images on a page, but they seem to start you off with about 20 pages per book. That seems to have been the minimum. And that's a very thin book with 20 pages in it. I did some books early on where they were very thin in terms of number of pages, but the way I overcame putting photographs in there was to put multiple images on a page. That's what I was able to do. So, but I think that's about 20 pages. If you go into the Lightroom module, and then just select make a book, I think what it'll do is start you off with about 20 pages. Cal, put your hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you a question. Supposing you just wanted to do your journey in photography throughout your life or for over a period of time, how would you go about that? There's a lot of pictures, a lot of different things that you're going to be entering into the book.
Yeah.
Travel, some things, and
that's almost, it's a monumental task, but throughout your lifetime, you've got to structure that in terms of a biography, I guess, how you got into photography. I've been working on a bio for about 15, 20 years now. I've got a draft of it on my computer, but you're looking at maybe adding text to that, and then you're going to illustrate your text with photographs. So you've got to go back and just lay out that whole thing, and that can become a very large task in itself. So I would start with, if I were going to do something like that, I probably would start with the biography, and then I would start to drop photographs in to kind of illustrate that. But you have a lot of text there that you're working with, and that becomes a totally different beast, because now you got to do something with text and what have you. You got to write a book, but basically is what it nets out to. And if you write that book, you've got to illustrate it with photographs if you want to do it that way. But if you want to do a photo book about your entire life in photography, it can be done. but you really would have to flow chart it and map it out because you can, when you do something that extensive, there's a tendency to run down rabbit holes, as we call them, or run off into space or do different things with it. There's a tendency to do that. But it can be done. So, but again, what I think I would start out with doing is outlining it first, early life, high school, college. And if you talk about from your photographic standpoint, how does your photography tie into that? I didn't pick up a camera until I was in art school, I guess it was. So the early part of my life would make a whole lot of sense to include growing up, doing this and doing that. If I were going to talk about it, I would talk about the first camera that I used. And if I were able to have some images from that first camera that I used, I would maybe include that. You've got to find a way to link or tie those threads together. And my story, photographically speaking, would be, what was the first camera? Do you have any images from that first camera? What was your next camera? Are you advancing the technology? Do you have any images from that camera? Then I went to art school. Do you have any images from art school? That's kind of how I would approach it. Because if you look at what you've done over your lifetime, you could have hundreds, maybe thousands of images for that book. And this is assuming you have access to all of those images as well. So you'd have to kind of map it out and then kind of build your photograph based on that map that you do. For me, if I were doing a story of my life in photography, I would start with the first camera I owned, which is an Argus C3. Do I have any images from that? I've got some old scrapbooks. I'd have to scan those images in. This is some early work. This is a camera that I use. Then I would go to art school, maybe bring the portfolio in there, and this shows my progression. Then the teaching, I'd have to divide mine into first camera, next camera, advancing the technology, art school, and then teaching. It'd be like 4 sections, and that would kind of cover my photographic journey. That's kind of how I would approach Cal. So, and each person's going to be individual. There's no, I use this term a lot, there's no cookie cutter approach, but you have to go to your particular story and how you want to map that particular story. And again, don't be afraid to go out and ask for guidance as you're doing that. And that's just my bit of guidance to you. That's how I would do it if I were building my own story. But yours may be a little bit different than mine, but that's how I would approach that.
Okay, I got you.
All right, hope that helped there. Okay, it's about 10:41. I don't want to go over this morning, so I'm going to leave it up to Q&A at this point in time. This afternoon, when we come back, what I want to be able to do is to get into the module, some hands-on of the module for a little bit, and just to kind of show you some things. And then we'll come back next week. We'll pick up the module again and go through some of the other pieces of it. There's about 4 or 5 more slides to it, I believe. There's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's actually 7 more pages. 7 more pages to it. And again, keep in mind, I'll be updating that as we go. So we left off with, I think we left off with sorting. We'll pick up sequencing the next time we meet. So maybe we'll do a module. Maybe we'll go into sequencing this afternoon, and then segue over into hands-on with the actual module. That's what I'm using module interchangeably. We'll finish up the module sequencing this afternoon, that slide, and then we'll segue into the actual tool itself, the Lightroom LRC book module. We'll go into that this afternoon and do some hands-on, just kind of playing with it. I've had a little bit of frustration with it because it does not do what I ask it to do on occasion. And I guess my thought process was that the more I use the tool, the more proficient I will become in using it. But the module, the Lightroom LRC book module, is a little buggy. If I were an expert in using it, I think it probably would be a little bit better, but it can be a little bit buggy. But we'll go into that this afternoon. I'll kind of show you some of the things that I've had some frustration with.
If it's buggy for you, it'll drive me nuts.
I mean, that, and like I said, you have to go and play with it. You have to be willing to do some things with it, back out, start all over. It's not like InDesign. When I'm working with InDesign, it's an easy program. I can put text anywhere, pictures anywhere on the page. I could anything I want, kind of in a freelance type of mode. But in this Lightroom module book, it's kind of tied to some various anchors. And it's there for a reason. Of course, you got to upload this stuff to Blurb, and they probably work together to make all of it work for the best for their systems. But I'll show you what I'm talking about this afternoon as we do the hands-on with the module itself. Okay, any questions? Anything about the homework assignments? Anything that we need to revisit before we shut down?
Well, I don't have one, but you got my head so wrapped up into this book now that I can't go neither backward or forward.
Okay.
But
Right.
I'm fine, so I don't have no one question before you go. Now, does it, if I have a choice to make a book and not going into Blur and go to my other company that prints the book that I have experience with before, will that make any difference?
No, the principles that you use here, you should be able to transfer to any book module that you're using.
Okay.
Provided that the book module that you're using will allow you to use some of the principles. For an example, SmugMug. And I pick on SmugMug because I think I actually did a book with them at one point in time. They typically offer up auto layout, and they will offer you the ability to lay out a book based on capture time. And it'll go through and it'll lay the whole book out for you. But does it allow you to customize those pages? A lot of the software will do that. And if it allows you to customize your pages, then you've got more control of the design process.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I've seen a lot of books come back. Early on in the class, for an example, people were going out making books, and they come back, and the book is they use an autoflow type of layout. And on the layout, if you look at your screen, you're looking at the screen, you see everybody's icon, what have you. But it tries to fit all of the photographs into these little templates, and sometimes they don't work. Maybe you can rearrange those little templates the way you want them, but sometimes maybe you only want to do one photograph, or maybe you want some white space, or maybe we'll change the margins. It doesn't. Some of those automated programs do not allow you to do that. With the Lightroom book module, you can change all of that. You can customize the pages. With a program such as InDesign, you've got ultimate control in terms of how you lay it out or how you change the pages and what have you.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah. So I'd have to go out and look at some of the other programs. Like I said, I did download a package called Memento. I've got it on my desktop. I started playing with it. I'll go back and look at as we go forward. I think Flickr has a bookmaking module. I mentioned SmugMug has a big bookmaking module as well. But I'll go out and look at some of the other software programs. But the principles that we learn in this session should transfer to any bookmaking platform that you use, provided that bookmaking platform gives you the flexibility to change some things around or to use the principles that we learned.
Okay.
All right. With that said, it's about 10:47, coming up on 10:50 or so. I'm going to pause the recording and call it a day.